Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is 8:59 a.m. It is your favorite warlock, practicing sorcerer, necromancer, ordained archbishop, and just an overall student. Today, I was reflecting over some stuff that have occurred over the last few years, and the journey so far into my personal practices. A couple years ago, I got stopped by law enforcement twice within a 12-hour period because of a registration tag. Okay. That continuously fell off my rear license plate. Okay. My son's mother, for an example, was accused of striking another vehicle and then going inside. Now, which is basically leaving the scene of an accident type thing. And I thought it was kind of interesting because if I had known then what I know now, I could have easily helped her get that case thrown out. But even if I did, she wouldn't have fought it anyways. So it was basically useless for that aspect. But I was thinking about this from a legal perspective, and I've talked about this where I've walked down the street dressed head to toe in black, and a officer stops me and asks me for my identification and all that stuff. So I wanted to kind of touch base on this a little bit, especially from a religious perspective. Now, what's interesting here is church and state, according to the First Amendment, is separate. Okay, at least it's supposed to be, but yet they're intermingled right up through the anal, if you will. Now, knowing this and knowing that you have a right to freedom of speech, you can speak your mind, and it doesn't matter where you are. You just got to watch your tone and how you present yourself. Otherwise, it becomes a form of disrespect. But so, anyways, I was thinking about this as a minister and as a spiritual advisor to where I go to my clients, my charges and everything. You know, what would happen if you ended up getting stopped by law enforcement? What would happen if you're walking down the street and you are hindered by law enforcement? So I wanted to kind of touch base on you because this has been proven over the years as fact. Okay, so if you go underneath the 14th Amendment, and I did a video on this particular amendment before, and how it goes along with the freedom of the Free Travel Act specifically. But I wanted to kind of touch bases on this in a new way and a more how should I say this specific manner. I have friends who do a lot of traveling due to medical complications. I have friends who utilize their personalized vehicle for like DoorDash, for an example. I've got friends who like just to travel on their days off, okay, meaning going from state to state. Now, with that said, if you go underneath federal laws or state laws, it doesn't matter which state in the United States, they're all very similar. The subsection is 502.003. And you want to specifically look at subsection A and B, okay? Because if it's not hindered by B, then you're all set. Okay. But it also clarifies the difference between public passage and what defines public passage compared to that of a commerce, such as DoorDash or corporational aspect. And you really want to look at what is a license, what is registration, what does it mean? Okay. Now, the first thing an officer normally does when they pull you over is, do you know why I pulled you over? And it's like you really want to be a wise ass and go, shouldn't you already know that? You're the one pulling me over. You should know what I've done wrong, right? But most people are kind of intimidated by a law enforcement officer and they don't know their rights. So they just simply go, no, sir, what I do? And at that point, you're basically open up a can of worms where they can nail you with everything under the book that they can just to meet their quota. Okay. So this literally defines how you are to be approached and what your personalized responsibilities are compared to theirs. Okay. The code is 502.003. I will say that one more time. The subcode, division code, okay? The subsection is 502.003. Okay, and trust me, there's like 5 or 6 pages just on motor vehicle codes and creeds and stuff like that. Now, one of the videos I looked up was a guy out of Texas. I think he was from Texas, and he asked, "What is your emergency and how can I assist you?" And it's like, why the fuck would you want to assist them? Why would you want to do that? And he said, the couple asked for your license or registration. And it's like, yeah, this much I already know because they do that every time you get pulled over or asked to come over to their cruiser when you're on foot. Now, the 14th Amendment underneath the Free Travel Act, and I've said this before, is basically stating that you have a right to travel to and from unhindered. This means you have a right to go to a grocery store. You have a right to go to your place of employment. You have a right to go to your friend's house. You have a right to go from your house to, say, for an example, your temple, okay? Or even to a state park, if you will, okay? Without being hindered. And basically, the only way that can happen is if it's a matter of national security or under CDC guidelines of what is a health priority, if you will, such as heart attack, COVID, influenza outbreak, whatever. That then a sanction could be put over you and say, "Hey, you cannot go anywhere." But outside of that, they cannot hinder you. They cannot even stop you because of the fact that underneath their lingo is called an RAS, and that basically means reasonable, articulable suspicion. Okay, RAS for short. And if they have none, they have no reason to pull you over, no proof that you've done any kind of crime or moving violation. Then you ask them what an SAF is. And an SAF is singular articulable um, fact. Okay. SAF. And if they have none of that, then they've literally ass fucked themselves and put themselves into a felony. Okay. Now I've had cops come up to me and ask me to come over and say, hey, this is what's your name? What's your can I see your identification? Now, obviously, I would sit there and go, yeah, sure, why not? Because you're thinking I have nothing to hide, so why the fuck would I be worried, right? Well, they can sit there and nail you underneath that alone and say, well, guess what? This is a person of interest. Well, right now they are going underneath what is known as the Fourth Amendment, and the Fourth Amendment right states that they have to. It doesn't matter if they're in your home, they've been invited to your home, your workplace, or if they are pulling you over on the side of a road for walking, or say, for an example, pulling you over for a traffic stop. It doesn't matter. They have to tell you and inform you why they are pulling you over and why they are there. Okay, this basically means if they've been invited to go there, they have to say, hey, this person invited me to come here. Okay, Magic, knock it the fuck off. That is not a scratching post. Oh, I apologize, Magic. Harley, that is not a scratching post. Go dig your fucking board. Or the mat. Either way, I don't give a shit. Don't dig the bed. So, I apologize. So, anyways, basically, the Fourth Amendment basically states that they have to tell you why they're there. Okay. Now, underneath the First Amendment, you have a right to freedom of speech and freedom of religion. Okay, so and it defines what a protected religion is. So, a protected religion is protected by the United States Constitution. Okay, this is the 29 amendments of the Constitution. So, a license plate being having registration on it or not is not a reason for them to pull you over, because you do not need registration. Okay, you do not need a license. You do not need any form of identification or to tell them who you are. Okay, to show your proof of who you are. So why don't we take a look at a couple of examples here? What is a license? A license is basically telling you, these people, the government officials, hey, I'm I'm so and so. I live at this address, which means I own this address. And basically, this gives them the opportunity to go, hey, guess what? I get to fucking tax your ass. Okay. I get to pose any kind of hindrance on you that I wish, financially speaking. Okay. And basically, when they do censor aspects throughout the year, it is not to say how many people live in that region. Okay. It is more about taking note and registering you as a citizen so that they can keep tabs on you more frequently in what you're doing. Now, registering is a form of sanctioning. Okay, registering means that you are showing legal proof of being an owner of something. Okay, so if you go out and you purchase a car, and I was in Nextdoor yesterday. Nextdoor is an app for local, communities to benefit from each other. So if you live in the Bangor Brewer region of the state of Maine, for an example, or the New Orleans and Baton Rouge region of Louisiana, it's kind of like an app to say, hey, does anybody know about this? How to sell a car? How to buy a car, if you will? What to look at when purchasing a vehicle, you know, type thing, or a home or whatever. So basically, it's registering something is basically saying that once you purchase something, you have a certain amount of time and are legally morally responsible and liable for that stuff. Okay. So, and you have to register it according to the legal law. Okay. And you can actually look up what is a license and what is registration. What isn't a registration? Okay. What is a registration and what is a license? That is something that you can easily Google. And there is actually a PDF on this particular subsection, okay, of 502.003. I found it very interesting because it covers what is a bicycle, what is a motorcycle, what is a off-road vehicle. And they all have different sanctions, different capabilities, and what can be taxed. Now, the thing is that there are two aspects here. First of all, what is taxed is through commerce, and this is basically gas tax, if you will. Gas tax is where they can tax the hell out of you or a percentage out of you for anything that you're doing, such as business and corporations. If you're running say for an example, a business, and you're driving in a commercial van, then they can tax you for that van because you're utilizing government gas. Okay. Now, keep in mind that those types of taxes, which are basically what a ticket is, if you are getting receiving a ticket from a peace officer, is basically they're basically putting you on notice. Hey, you are going to pay this fine. Well, guess what? Right here, this is ignorance. This is literally flat out fraud. Okay. Because as an officer of the law, they have to know the difference between what is taxable and what is not. Okay. Legally right. Now, commerce is a lot different from a traffic violation. Okay. So if you've literally done nothing wrong, like let's say for an example, you use your blinkers, you're going anywhere between the speed limit the and five over, you're within reasonable um, speeds. Now cops on the other hand are trained to go at least 25, 50 over. Okay, much like a drifter or a street racer, type speeds, and they're allowed to do that legally. Well, shouldn't you be held accountable and liable for the things that you're doing, that you're violating on that alone? You see, just because you have a badge and a gun doesn't mean that you're above the law. Okay, look at recent events with all the cops being put on trial over the last couple of years for murder, for assault, for overstepping boundaries. There was one where a guy was holding his newborn child, and rent a cops literally tased his ass while he was holding that newborn baby. Okay. These cops are lucky that that baby did not die due to electric currents and voltages going through the as a secondary factor. Okay. You have a woman in footage showing, what was it, about 10 years or so ago, where a woman was being tased repeatedly by an officer out in California at a traffic stop, okay, where she was hauled out, she was in handcuffs, she was being tased repeatedly, she was crying and asking for mercy, and yet they continuously told her to stop resisting. That's criminal actions right there. Okay, so I want to kind of put that into a perspective here for you. So basically, this goes back to RAS and SAF. Okay, the two questions that were put forth. Do you have any suspicion? What is your suspicion? What is your how should I say this? Your cause for pulling me over? What is your suspicion? What is your commerce? Your proof of commerce. And if they have none, then basically they've committed a felony because of the fact that they're using public, not governmental facility, utility vehicles. And I am telling you this because it doesn't matter if they're in a police car. It does not matter if it's like registered or unregistered police vehicles, being um, undercover vehicles or whatever. It is still government employee vehicles. Okay, ambulance, fire department vehicles, police vehicles. These are all things that have sirens on them and are utilized by first responders. Okay, and an officer of the law is considered to be a first responder. So if they are utilizing their sirens and their lights without probable cause, then they are in violation and committing an actual felony. Okay, which means they've lost their job, they've lost the right to practice law in whatever state and city that they're in. Okay, they basically can go to prison and be charged with that felony. Okay, and it comes down to what the court of law establishes on them for that violation. But more so, it opens them up for a legal lawsuit because you, as the patron or the civilian, has a right to sue for losses for being wronged, and it's the same as being being hit with defamation of character, if you will. You know, being slandered, because that's basically what they're doing. They're trying to commit fraudulent activity. So there's a huge difference from running a corporation and being an individual running from point A to point B running errands. You're not committing commerce. Okay, so it comes down to amoralism. Okay, so basically, there are two proven facts, and I've actually looked into these that were given and put forth. Was Marduk versus Pennsylvania, and Shuttlesworth versus the city of Birmingham, Alabama. Now, I found this kind of interesting because this actually put me onto the question of what is a registration, how does it, what is it defined as, and what is a license, and why does one need it? Okay, but then again, as an archbishop and somebody who, like I said, looks over charges, and I'm talking, you know, people within a religious community, there's a huge difference between being a religious elder and actually being somebody who's going forth and applying a business on public streets. Okay, so if you are going out, and this is not what churches get away with. Okay, churches get away with this because of their tax, like 30% of what other people get, regular citizens get taxed, and normally it is the homeless or the middle class, the low and middle classes that get hit the hardest within this area of taxation. So you're probably wondering, why is this part of this? Well, this is why. Taxes were for the rich and shameless originally. Okay, meaning Trump, Elon Musk, government personnel such as senators, governors, the president, and so forth. Now, these offices used to be honorable before the corruption started, and this corruption has gone down into law enforcement, unfortunately. And I'm not saying all cops are bad. There's actually a few good cops out there, and I happen to know a few of them. I'm actually friends with one, and I consider him a friend, even though he's a one of my customers. We have a lot in common, and we like to learn, we like to write, and you know, it's he and I talk every morning that I'm on the job and he's on the job. So it's like, if I didn't talk to him, I know he'd be suspicious and go, okay, something's fucked up there. I better call in some backup and say, hey, this is going on. You might want to check it out. It's one thing to be busy, but when there's no vehicles around and this person's not talking, that's kind of offshoot. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so it is kind of interesting how this particular creed goes into just about every aspect. I mean, I go into work and I look at the wall, and you've got the business license. You have the individual GMs who have been recognized for their work, but yet no one underneath has been recognized for that work or for what they do. So it's kind of like that discrimination aspect and segregation aspect, because they tell you, well, you can't speak on your wages. You cannot speak on this. You cannot. Well, number one, you're in violation of the First Amendment. Second of all, the fact that you're telling your employees you can't be friends with an employee because you're management. Again, that's subdivision. That's herd conformity, and that is literally flat out segregation, and it's basically separating upper management from lower management and servitude. Okay. And the one thing I've learned recently when learning how to operate a business and to actually create a business is learning the difference of why the upper management cannot associate with them. Why are they telling you this? Well, most colleges will produce an individual for employeeism, what you can do for an already established corporation, but they don't teach you how to run an organization and create one. So that was kind of cool to find out. So when you get into the legal laws, you get into the fact of fees and registration and taxes, but also various different types of violations. Happy China recently, from what I understand, it was one of their branches. I don't know which one. I think it's one here in Bangor, but I'm not sure. It was a Newsbreak, and it said they got hit with like 113 violations of code violations. And it's like, what? This is the fucking cleanest place you'll ever fucking meet. My family goes in there all the fucking time, you know? And so I don't know what the fuck they were talking about. But it was interesting to see because the fact between the company I work for, the fact that I'm starting a business and I'm trying to put it together and figure out how I'm about to do this because I want it to be not only legal but proper. And I've got to figure out, okay, who am I going to trust in this? How am I going to go about doing this? I already have doctor, and I already have a place in mind of where to set up, and I also have a following. So, you know, the First Amendment is already taken care of. Now, if you're going to be doing like what the Christians do, and you have what is called a van ministry, okay, this is called commercial. Okay, this is called commerce because you're providing a public service. If you are a taxi driver or you are running a van ministry where you're picking people up at their homes and traversing them to a church or an established location, this is a business where money and monetary items get transactions. Okay. So it doesn't matter if you're running a business or you're just going from point A to point B. This is where this goes into play. Okay. And the 14th Amendment underneath the Free Travel Act actually breaks it down and tells you that it doesn't matter if you're going from one country to another, you have a right to traverse those borders, okay, to and from your place of origin. Second of all, you can go from state to state, borough to borough, city to city without being hindered. So if you are just driving to go get, say, for an example, a gallon of milk, you cannot be hindered for not having tags on your car. You cannot be hindered for not having a license plate. Okay? Because number one, you're not doing anything wrong. It is your personal property. You don't have to talk to a law enforcement officer. That is fifth freedom, by the way. That is the Fifth Amendment. And underneath the Fourth Amendment, like I said, they have to tell you, not you tell them. Okay? Keep that in mind. So on top of that, like I said, Google this stuff. Google it. There's one book that was actually put forth, and it was a book of Texas law, and it was called the Texas Criminal and Traffic Law Manual. And from what I understand, this guy's brother bought this book for like over $300. And it's like, fuck, are you kidding me? Over $300 for that one book? But then again, I look at the medical books that my son's mother had to purchase while in college. Going for her medical billing and coding class to that of phlebotomy. To going for her her MA degree and stuff like that. And it's like, fuck. I mean, you're looking over $160 just for one fucking book that is more like a textbook, not an actual book. That's criminal in itself. I mean, when you can go underneath Amazon and eBay and get it for a fraction of the cost, Yeah, and used nonetheless, for a fraction of that cost, then yeah. But if you and a friend are just traveling from, say, Maine to Boston, you know, you have a right to video your journey. You have a right to traverse, territory. You have a right to to just go your own way. It is because if you're being sanctioned by law enforcement or the government through a license or a registration, then basically they're imposing their will on you and you're being controlled. Basically, that's called slavehood. Okay. And slavery is illegal in the United States, just like um, segregation and subdivisions. Okay. This is all criminal activity here at this point when they do that. So again, learning your rights as a minister or as an elder running say for an example, just what I do here. I put my knowledge out there freely, and therefore I don't. The government can't tax me, and that's what's going to piss them off the most about that. Okay, so underneath this creed alone, subsection 203.003, I don't have to share my identification. I don't have to share my registrations. I don't have to do a damn thing. And I don't have to fucking say a goddamn word because of this. Okay. And all of this stuff that I've talked about, I've actually put in the description box down below so that you can go in and actually look at this stuff for yourself. Now, the only one I did not put in there was the First Amendment. Okay. And when it comes to law enforcement, now you can actually add in the Second Amendment on top of that as well. Okay. And for those of you women who are against the abortion acts and everything, look up the 1010-117 Congress Act, sections A and B. Okay. And you'll notice that you have a right to bear or and conceive a child or terminate a child based on physical, mental health or safety. Okay. And second of all, Part B clearly states that you, as an individual, don't have to worry about the government facilities. That includes judges, that includes law enforcement, anybody who's a government agency, okay, such as judicial facilities, to law enforcement divisions, to, say, for an example, the DOD, ATF, FBI, you know, Homeland Security, or whatever, okay, cannot limit or deny you. They can't even get involved, okay? So the fact that Roe versus Wade was diminished basically was giving authority back to the individual states, okay? And that alone goes into this as well, because they basically are telling you that if you've committed an abortion in any state that doesn't have a law against this, then you will still be tried for manslaughter. Well, guess what? You have a right to go to and from, according to the Free Travel Act. Number two, you don't have to show registration or ID to them. It's up to them to prove, and you don't have to speak. So the right to remain silent falls under this, that protects you as the woman and the man. Okay, not just women and men. The whole every gender, I might add. So in that aspect. So right there, you've got a number of sources to look up, and you've got a number of different aspects that you can get into and learn about this stuff in. So it's not just about what the government is doing right now. Like, if you look at what's going on in Texas, for an example, you have motorcycle brigades. You've got the National Guard. You've got Border Patrol sitting there going, "Fuck you, Biden." Okay, we're going to traverse our borders and protect our borders, which is their right to do because it is their land. It is the land of Texas. It is their fucking border. Okay, so they get to dictate who can cross and who doesn't and how they do it. Not Biden, not the government. So, I mean, even if Biden wants to sit there and call forth the reserves and bring them into active duty, guess what? He's only fucking himself in that aspect. So again, the this particular act literally falls into play here. So, and it's funny how this literally is just unfolding live right here, and it's just flowing, flowing. It's like shit. You know, when the spirits talk, I just listen. That's all I gotta say. But it is funny to see the difference between a commercial or commerce in that of an individual taking things into their own hands. Now, if you look at the Fifth Freedom Act, okay, the Fifth Freedom Act in itself, if the government isn't going to be held liable for their wrongdoings, then it's up to the American people underneath Fifth Freedom to make it right. Texas is doing this. They're utilizing their own vehicles. They're utilizing trucks and truckers. They're utilizing the National Guard in their vehicles. They're utilizing their civilians who are literally stepping up as volunteers to go, hey, I'm going to watch my border for you. Whew. Even landowners. Wow. And just think, they could be using dirt bikes, they could be using horses, they could be utilizing bicycles, they could be utilizing what do they call those ATV type vehicles, such as a three wheeler, a four wheeler. You know, it doesn't matter if it's registered or not because it's in that. What's that old expression? Possession is 9/10 of the law. Ooh, yes, you gotta love that. So, like I said, what's down below? I want you to look at. It's up to you if you choose to look into it or not. I highly recommend it because ever since I started learning the laws, a friend of mine that used to be my GM has benefited a lot from it. And I'm even to this day, even though it's been almost a year since his term, since he left, and the facility, here I'm still feeding him information that will protects him legally. And let's face it, he's not good at research, so he wouldn't have known this stuff. So I mean, when I told him about the salary, according to state of Maine law, it doesn't matter if you work an hour or 55 hours, you still get paid the full amount of wage. Okay. So the fact that the company tried going against that, he could easily go against them and say, hey, I'm taking you to a court of law, which he actually did, by the way. So there was a lot of things that went into that and led to him leaving the company, and I'm not going to get into it. But seeing how these restrictions are being placed on a lot of different areas within a form of corruption. It doesn't matter if it's highway patrol, doesn't matter if it's local law enforcement, doesn't matter if it's the federal bureau of fuck you. Okay, it doesn't matter what government branch it is. If you are traveling, you need to know the difference between your personal rights as a civilian and that of what is actually used for taxes. So when you're issued a ticket for a moving violation of some kind, let's say for an example, a brake light is out, or um, you didn't use a turn signal, perhaps you spilled coffee in your lap and you kind of swerved a little bit. That is not suspicion of say drunk driving, or driving under the influence. It's not even suspicion to pull somebody over. All they can do is say, hey, I just want to let you know your tail light is out. They cannot write you up for that. Okay. They can't even tax you on it because, number one, they can't prove that you're committing commerce. There's no suspicion or, say, for an example, any probable cause for pulling your ass over. Okay. So they can't do shit for you, to you. unless you give them that reason. Hence why they always tell you, don't say a fucking word. Okay? So I concur, Jeremy, by the way, on that. I was just reading that while I was talking. And I do concur with that. The government should be protecting the American people, but in fact, they're taxing them to the point where you can't even make a living. Okay, you actually do have a right underneath the 14th Amendment. Underneath the Fourth Amendment right, you have a right to prosper and make a living. So they cannot hinder you on that alone. So I mean, again, the Fourth Amendment is applied here. So the fact that you're traversing, in a vehicle going to and from, they can't do shit about that. So they're going to try to get you other ways. Well, guess what? This is called fishing. Okay, they're fishing for a cause. They're fishing for how should I say this? They're trying to find that suspicion that will get them that warrant or give them a right to meet their quota, to write you up and to get you registered. And that's basically what they're forcing you to do, is to force you to become a resident. Okay, they want you registered. They want you to be able to keep tabs on you. They want it's basically like saying, hey, if we have to commit a martial law and you're in violation of that, we can go to your home and confiscate your guns, which is basically what they've started doing with cops with psychology degrees, basically saying, hey, yeah, this individual is unstable, you know, suspicion runs on this, this, and this. I'm going in, we can confiscate your guns. That's in violation of the Second Amendment. So if even if you did that and you say, for an example, they're trying to get you registered so that if they feel you are a threat, they can go in and have you arrested and put you into internment camps. Okay. But even if you look at Hollywood produced films, for example, let's say Red Dawn, did you ever wonder how all those people ended up in internment camps? It's because they were fucking registered. Okay. Even with the new one starring, what's that guy's name? Chris Wentworth, I think it was the guy that plays Thor, where he played the big brother to that guy from what the fuck was that show that my nephew always liked to watch when he was a teenager? Fuck, I can't remember that guy's name. I think it was like Josh and Drake or something like that. Yeah, it was. Um, the fat guy there, the fat kid there. There was a big stink over him losing so much weight, um, getting fit, which is no crime at all, by the way. But a whole bunch of people ended up in internment camps getting arrested. They started putting checkpoints in and stuff like that. Well, look at what they're doing throughout your states. Okay, when you're driving down an interstate, which is a public highway, by the way, this particular creed means that you cannot be hindered by those things. But yet they're constantly adding more and more toll booths. This is another form of taxation. Okay. And if you go through that without paying, they're going to hit you with your license plate. Okay. They're going to look you up through your license plate. Jersey did this to me one day. I was on my way back from Tucson, Arizona. I was on my way to Maine years ago. And I had a roll of quarters with me. Now, most of the tolls I've gone through is maybe $1 or $2 up until that point. Well, this was over $13. Okay. And it was the border between Jersey and Connecticut. Okay. And the girl looked at me and says, don't worry about it. We'll send you the invoice for it. We got your license plate, photo, all that. Okay. Well, that should have clicked to me back then, but unfortunately, light bulb wasn't on back then. So here it is. I ended up getting a thing in the mail stating that if I don't pay this within a certain amount of time, I will be arrested. Well, guess what? Right there, that's enforcing registration. Okay. That's enforcing taxation. okay, which the government is not and cannot legally do, okay, through the 14th Amendment, unless it is based off commerce. And that is only for, like I said, the rich and shameless who own their own corporations, okay, such as trucking companies, such as um, big corporations like Trump, for an example, or Elon Musk, that own their own big financial companies and can actually go in and do this shit. Okay. And they're utilizing vans, trucks, class A, B, and C vehicles. Okay. This is how the government keeps tracks of these corporations. But they're utilizing it even further to hinder and limit the working class. Okay. Meaning they can tax the shit out of you any way they want and get away with it unless you stand up for your legal rights. Okay. And that is why I gave you two cases that were won, by the way. And another case was actually put forth. Um, I believe it was underneath a federal law. It was like federal. Ah, fuck. What the hell was that? It was a federal case that was put forth a while back, and it was put on underneath license and registrations. Do you need a license to drive? The answer is no. You don't need a license to drive. You don't have to have any form of identification on you according to the 14th Amendment, the Free Travel Act. You don't even have to have registration to the vehicle because you don't need proof. It's not up to you to show that proof. It is up to the legal law enforcement to uphold those laws and prove it belongs to you. So, again, taxes come in many different forms. And the fact that the, Texas, for an example, is being hit by Trump and the government, you've got FBI and U.S. Marshals going on to individual people's property, fully armored, by the way, and geared up to try to evict you, which is land taxed. Okay. And you have a right to defend your home. Okay. Second Amendment. Again. So, and then you got the fact that Trump was basically his right to practice business in New York recently um, was removed because apparently he somehow committed fraud in that region, like numerous amounts of fraud, and they're still going after this guy. Well, why aren't they going after Biden and his family for all the stupidity and criminal activity that they've done? You see, right there, it's the rich and shameless get away with murder, and the first and second classes, the low and middle class um, people, are the ones that pay the price. So again, it goes back to the 17th century when the Constitution was implemented, created, and put forth that all men were created equal. Okay, we're equal. Okay, basically meaning it does not matter who you are. You have a right to make a living. You have a right to protect your home. You have a right to speak your mind. You have a right to traverse the highways. Okay. You have a right to own your own home. You have a right to make a living. Wow. I mean, even if you show equal rights through the labor laws, for an example, and say, "Hey, I have a right to move up the company and make a living." Whew, corporations hate that. It means you just moved yourself to the top of their enemy watch list because you dared to question them. You dared to become that enemy, that adversary, that Ha Satan, that El Shaitan. Whew. Knowing your laws is fun. Knowing how to protect yourself is fun because it means you're not putting up with their shit any longer. And in a court of law, if they don't have all their ducks in a row, they're fucked. Point blank, they are fucked. And it all comes down to 502.003, sections A and B. So yeah, okay. But yeah, I wanted to put that forth and kind of just say, hey, I was thinking about this. I did a whole bunch of research on this, and to see how it plays into a wide range of things. Now that this video is over, it's like, fuck, that's amazing how that unfolds. So, but yeah, but even with what Jeremy Williams said on here in the comment section, building a wall is not going to fix the border problems. More people staffed to patrol and work on the area is logical. And it is. And the thing is, they don't want to put out the money. Okay. If you look how the rich get richer, they don't put out money that they don't have to. So if they hire let's say, for an example, they put out um, an insurance claim. Okay. They fill out all the insurance and stuff like that covers their ass, which means they get that funding back. While you, as the worker, has lost your life, your work, your livelihood, and all that stuff. Okay, basically meaning you're fucked, but they prosper. Okay, basically meaning they're held accountable and liable. Now, because number one, they have assets and they acquire assets instead of liabilities. Okay, you as the worker or the civilian is considered to be the liability. Okay, you are considered an asset and they take you underneath their wing as that asset, as an employee. Okay, now what's interesting there, Jeremy, is the fact that when you look at assets, you look at the coverage that you have through insurance agencies and companies. So even if you get fired, you get arrested, or you just get up and walk, or you just simply flat out die, okay, they are they are covered and they get their money back. Whereas you are shit out of luck, your families are shit out of luck because you were their provider. Okay, so most people don't look into liabilities and assets because, like I said earlier, colleges basically train people to be employees, not running your own corporation or business. Okay. Hence why I've been studying how to open up an archdiocese, how to open up a temple, how to start an organization, a business based off what I do. Okay. So, and like I said, even if you go into the van ministries, then it becomes commerce because now you are accepting money in monetary aspects that can be taxed and seized by the US government. And that's how governments are actually stay in power because they utilize so many different subsections in their clauses that most people get so bored and their eyes glaze over within the first few minutes that it's like, oh, just fuck this, I'm going to sign. And then you're held accountable through your own stupidity because you didn't read the whole fucking clause. Okay, you didn't read the small print, the fine print at the bottom. That's how they get you. Okay, so knowing the difference between the taxes that and what is taxable compared to, say, for an example, a regular traversing aspect, like I said, and even if we look at this in a corporational perspective, they have you covered through their insurance. You are an asset to them. So you look at, for an example, the other day, it was like a week ago, I think. Yeah, it's been about a week now, about a week and a half. We were driving, my son, his mother, and I, we were driving across, I think it was Griffin Road. And we saw a sheriff's car, an SUV, the front end completely dismantled, driving right down the fucking road. Okay, just driving right down the road. I mean, it had no quarter panels, no front bumper. The engine was completely exposed. And right there, this is a traffic hazard. Are they being held accountable as a liability? Because that engine is now open to the hazards of the road, which means if something, let's say for an example, something gets stuck in a hose, well, now you got oil or fuel going all over the fucking place that is literally going to start a fire, could kill the officer in general, not to mention cause an accident, which brings the civilians into it. Not mentioning the second and third dairy hindrances there because of the fact that through an explosion of a vehicle, the bumpers will fly off. You know, those metal bumpers will fly off um, at certain temperatures. You have the fact that the concussion aspects of the explosion can knock somebody down, kill them, give them concussions, injure their organs and everything like that. Because I used to be a firefighter for 4 years on the junior side, and I learned quite a bit of that. I mean, that just seeing how a vehicle operates and can, when it catches on fire, how it works, how it explodes. I mean, you're dealing with the first, second, and third primary causes of death, injury, and everything that falls underneath that alone, especially through an accident. Okay, so right there, that's commerce. Okay, that is commerce because they are providing a service to the people. Okay, that's number one. Okay, so knowing that they are a liability, the vehicle is now a liability because of that engine being shown to the elements. Okay, the fact that the officer in general was driving that vehicle when it should have been being towed to a body shop. Hmm. Okay, so right there, that is commerce. You're being paid to fulfill a service to the community. Now, somebody who's a car owner going from point A to point B and gets pulled over, that is more tricky because of the fact that you have to make them prove why they pulled you over. You have to sit there and go by the law and say, hmm, do you have reasonable cause, suspicion, or commerce for pulling me over? Why are you pulling me over? You can't just come up to my window and say, do you know why I pulled you over? No, you should already know that. Okay. So hiring more people is something they're not going to do because they want to cut that funding. They want to keep it in their pocket. This is how city councilmen and women stay rich. They get to sit on their ass while the rest of us work our asses off. Okay. They get to keep these $1 million homes, these cars that are worth $150,000. They get to have bodyguards while the rest of us lose everything. Hmm. All because of insurance. And it comes down to assets and liabilities. Knowing that, the Border Patrol can sit there and go, we see the issue, but we can't do shit about it because we don't have the funding. The higher ups, such as the chief or deputy chief, has to go in front of a board, a panel, and go, hey, this is what we spent in the last few years. This is the increasing influx of what we're seeing. We need more funding. Well, guess what? That panel, that council can sit there and go, we're fucking denying it. We're denying it. You're showing us no reason to give you extra funding. Why should we give you funding when so and so over here is putting in new solar panels for a possible fuel efficient, product that will cut back on fuel efficiency and increase power flow throughout the state, such as Versant or let's say, for an example, let's go with Spectrum. Okay, one of the biggest internet supplying companies around. Okay, so if they come out with new technology that they claim is better, guess what? Look into the past. They've already had things that work 10 times better than the newest product out there. So why would they want to spend money aiding a border issue when they can sit there and give money to, say, the DOT to cut down a tree, a single tree, that would take them up to 5 hours to do? Why? Taking a chainsaw to a tree is a penny's worth of gas. Hiring somebody to protect a border, you're looking at $54,000, about $50,000 to $75,000 a year. Hmm. Which one would you choose to keep money in your pocket? And that's what it comes down to: fear and greed. Fear and greed. Number one, they sit there and constantly put this fear out there. Oh, these people are coming through the Mexican Texas border. Really? How many people do you see in a run of a day doing that? If there was that much of a threat, then why aren't you taking action instead of sitting back and going, well, it's really not a big issue. Hmm. It's damned if you do and damned if you don't. Hmm. But yet you're going to go after a former president who literally has proven to do his job as a president, while the current president is running amok and destroying the fucking economy and the world and the entire nation. How much are we in debt to in America debt to right now to other countries? I mean, hell, look at what we owe. Look at what America owes China right now, and yet China is already aligned against America. Why not just call in that fucking marker? Just repo the country. They got no problems repoing your car, your home, your very assets because you're behind. Huh? Why not do that? But yet you're not going to sit there and hire the people needed to secure a border. Hmm. Interesting how that works. It's called hypocrisy and duality. And that's the difference between an asset, acquiring assets, and liabilities. But when you get into these codes and these creeds and you start learning your rights, all of a sudden you've made yourself a threat. You've made yourself a threat. I don't know about you, but I got no problems with that. I really don't. Just ask my bosses. I put them on notice when they decided to go against me and what I wanted and what I was trying to go for. Oh, yeah, that didn't work out too well for him. But hey, it is what it is, right? So I want to thank Jeremy Williams for jumping on here and communing with me. For those of you who are jumping on after the fact, I hope this has found your ears to incline. I hope you use your eyes to go see and do your homework. You know, always back up what you preach with numerous sources, and always make yourself available to the public because you are responsible for the things that you do and say. Okay. If you like this channel and you like what I do and how I'm teaching you, feel free to hit that notification button. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more coming your way, and I mean a lot more. Um, because as an archbishop of multi-faith um, practices, as a necromancer, as a warlock, I'm always looking to protect covens. I'm always looking to protect myself, my family, and basically better our world. Okay. And like I said, through fifth freedom, if the government's not going to back you up, then you got to stand up as a culture and say, fuck you to the government. We're not putting up with this shit no more. It doesn't just apply to military personnel that have turned against the company, the country, and made a militia. It's also you as the civilian that can do this. Okay. This is your legal um, rights that you can do to stand up for yourself. Okay. Doesn't matter if it's religious, doesn't matter if it's just personal uses, it doesn't matter if if you're trying to run a corporation. Your rights are your rights. So learn how to protect them. All right. With that said, I'm out. I'm gonna go clean my apartment a little bit more, and probably sit down and start reading. I may even go into my temple here in a little bit and start communing with the gods. So exactly, autonomy, one of our basic principles. Exactly, Jeremy. Well said. So have a good one. I'm out.